Namaskar and welcome to DGI with Sri and Sri. Today is the 1st of September, Wednesday, and this is episode number 237. Here are the main points. Taliban declare victory in Afghanistan as the US forces pull out. Poland seeks a state of emergency along the border amid record high immigration levels. Sri Lanka declares economic emergency to contain food prices amid a forex crisis. India's ambassador to Qatar held a formal meeting with a top Taliban leader on Tuesday, the first formal diplomatic engagement, and consumer confidence falls to 6 months low on COVID-19 and inflation worries. Now, let's take a quick look at what is happening in Afghanistan. Mr. Biden spells out his policy as he laid down his principles behind the exit of United States from Afghanistan. Sridharji, namaskar, and perhaps you can walk us through what were the contents of this last press conference, sir.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody on this wonderful September 1st. We kick off another month on Wednesday, so except that here it's raining around Manhattan. What's Biden's policy? It was fascinating to hear him in his first public appearance post the withdrawal. And he was there, and he made very interesting statements. He said the withdrawal and the exit was messy, but it had to be done. Yes, there are a few people stranded. We'll work towards making it happen. But he made three important observations. First and foremost observation is this is needed because our priority is to focus on the emerging threat from China. It's very interesting that he made that point. And also other types of competition that we are facing as we get into the 21st century. Now, he laid out in many words, which sets the framework for his foreign policy. And he said, first and foremost, we must have clear mandate and we must have a clear focus on battles that we choose and we go after. Any battle that has no clear objective is bound to fail. That's the first battle. The first point for policy. The second, he made that the priority of United States is on national security and its internal security. That's the priority that United States will focus on. So these are the two important foreign policy lessons, apparently, that he has learned based on the Afghan experience. He just went on to add one other point, which is namely, to say that we will always work with our allies in making sure that there is, stability and order around the world. But our priorities are, our foreign policy priorities are enshrined in these two principles.
And the irony here is that his party decides to block any attempts to discuss this. What is going on in Democratic Party, sir? Are the progressives, we know they are loud, but are they effective? Or they continue to be effective?
They're very effective, and if I have to be a little sarcastic, because I don't believe in progressive policies, if I have to be sarcastic, then I have to say they are very effective in making sure no dialogue or no discussion takes place, anything that is around their dissent. Anything that they like, they are right ahead of the line. I'll give you one example of the cuff. One example is they want now Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, to be removed and replaced with someone who has progressive ideas and progressive policies, who focuses and enshrines climate policy into the Fed policy framework of decision making. This is progressives.
Interesting. And the Taliban declare victory in Afghanistan as the US forces pull out. The Taliban will follow an Iran model of governance, meaning that there is going to be a supreme leader, just like Ayatollah Khomeini was. It's going to be Hibatullah Akhundzada. And this person, a little bit more, Sridhar ji will be explaining on this. As the US exits, Osama bin Laden's security chief makes a triumphant return to Afghanistan. And Britain's chief of air staff is ready to launch strikes against the ISIS-K, echoing US sentiments. So now, once the presence of foreign people in Afghanistan goes away, essentially the Western powers are free to strike wherever they want, at least if they want to use drones and so on and so forth, right, Sridharji?
Well, I think they will go after the terrorist targets, which is anything that they believe they pose a threat to the global order, and any statements that are made, they will go. But they're not going to go in a preemptive manner to target and strike. Here is the three anomalies. First and foremost, they said Taliban has been marginalized; it will go mainstream. Completely false. That the entire core leadership, barring Mullah Omar, is intact. They have been operating from Kandahar or somewhere around the Pakistani border. Number one. Number two, they said either Al Qaeda is marginalized or completely eliminated. This doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you celebrate it. It looks like, barring Osama bin Laden, most of the leadership seems to be intact and they all have resurfaced in Afghanistan. Number three, they said that ISIS-K doesn't exist or ISIS-K has been marginalized. Lo and behold, ISIS-K is back. So none of the statements and none of the objectives have been met. They said this is not in nation building, and you find that we have spent $2.2 trillion of US taxpayer money, besides leaving behind, inclusive within the 2.2 is trillion, is the $87 billion of equipment capable of being the third or fourth largest, fifth largest, or fourth or fifth largest army in the world. So here's the dichotomy of the mission accomplished versus mission unaccomplished.
And viewers, we are going to have a dedicated session about the rise of these three entities, the ISIS, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban, tomorrow with Sridharji, and that will be at 9 p.m. IST Thursday. And do tune in for that, because we will be taking a look at the geographic growth. Where are the strengths of areas of strength for them, and what does it mean for the Middle East, or you can also call it West Asia, which is probably more accurate. What does it mean for it, and the evolving strategy, where we've already told you about this. We have Sahel region and the three eyes and what it means. So stay tuned. Please join us tomorrow, and let's move on with today's news. Pakistan is a strategic winner with the return of Taliban and Al Qaeda. Well, this is like what Senator Hillary Clinton had said, that you can't grow snakes in your backyard hoping that they'll only bite your neighbor. So we'll have to wait and see what the effect of all this is on Pakistan itself. Your thoughts, sir?
I think my thoughts are these are very dangerous trends that you're beginning to see. You saw that there was a statement from Al Qaeda that appeared overnight, which is about what their strategic objectives are. Not a great sign.
And let's take a look at global news now. The Quad exercises that were completed last week present an alternative vision to CCP ideology, cohesion in planning, training, and deployment of advanced warfare techniques. So this kind of happened quietly, isn't it?
Well, this has happened fairly quietly, and not much advertisement was given, but this we reported it in one of the DGI sessions. We also laid out what the objectives are, very strategic maneuvers, coordination, as well as more complicated maneuvers between the four different armies and how effectively to manage that. So I think that exercise is complete. So Quad, to some extent, continues to function, and there are two other important members, I may add, that have been working collaboratively with the Quad countries, namely France and UK.
And the Japanese Defense Ministry seeks additional hike in defense spending as security threats increase. Australia fans back peace in Taiwan Straits and agree on a joint maritime cooperation. Now, Taiwan is the one area now that is increasingly having a spotlight shown on it, because China has been making a lot of aggressive overtures. Sridharji, how do you see this thing happening? Because there is another significant development that happened vis-a-vis China, which we will touch upon in a short while. How do you see this thing? Is now Taiwan a little bit safer than it was perhaps a week ago?
Taiwan is, I wouldn't say that. Last night there was, which is last night United States time, or during the day, China did a simulation drill of an attack on Taiwan, and backed by we have already talked about using these special ferries for land forces to run into Taiwan. So I would not say that Taiwan is safe, but Taiwan is making every effort to make sure that it is getting the both what we call as the narrative, the message to the world community, but also engaging various countries to be inclusive in making a formidable defense. Yes.
And Poland seeks a state of emergency along border amid record high immigration levels. Ukraine hosts international summit calling for the return of Crimea from Russia. And the EU nations continue to battle Belarus border crisis. We remember, if you remember, viewers, we talked about some of the athletes competing in the Olympics trying to defect. This is just like the Iron Curtain in the 80s last century. And the EU pledges help to Afghan neighbors to help them cope with refugees. And the EU confirms that it has not recognized Taliban. So nobody officially has recognized Taliban, although we feel like the overtures made by China kind of tips its hands that they are recognizing it. So your thoughts about the overall strategy? There is a spillover of refugees starting to happen, and also how you see this going to play out in the next few weeks.
Yes. Just to set, EU is confronted with three major challenges. The first challenge is problems in Belarus, which is almost like the old Eastern European, Eastern Cold War Russian bloc. They continue to be. So they're trying to push many of these so-called refugees and rebels, etc., into the adjacent countries, creating problems in Poland, Lithuania, etc. They don't seem to be compliant to EU norms. They work to Russia or to their own order. So this is one issue the EU is simultaneously dealing with. The second issue is that they expect a whole inundation of the Afghan refugees, very similar to Arab Spring. They're trying to see whether aid can be given to the adjacent countries in the Afghan region, which is, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and so on, including part of Iran, and see whether they can be located. Strangely, but no surprise, the Pakistan foreign minister met with the EU officials and said, we already have 3 million people and we have no capacity to take on any refugees. Turkey says, we have no capacity to take on refugees. Iran, there is no formal dialogue with Iran from a EU perspective. So you can see the adjacent countries don't take it. Eventually, this is going to fall back on EU, and I call this as the Arab Spring 2, which is likely to happen. Good, bad, ugly, everybody is going to make it, creating further issues around the threat that is posed by some of the people who are not passing the security credentials.
And Sri Lanka declares an economic emergency to contain food prices amid a foreign exchange crisis. How did this thing come about? Because we don't really touch upon Sri Lanka a lot, except when something significant happens. Maybe you can add a little bit of perspective as to how Sri Lanka got here, sir.
Yes, I think we touched Sri Lanka on under three kind of triggers or parameters. First is around the Hambankota and the Colombo port, which is the dispute that goes on between China. Now, China seems to have well anchored, so therefore that's one of the areas we touch on. The second area is around the debt crisis and countries not helping, eventually China giving money, which means they own. The third is their foreign exchange reserves have been depleting because the country is economically paralyzed. When you have foreign exchange reserves depleting, what then happens is your ability to import the core items, that especially food, diminishes. So what they're trying to do is the government is trying to take charge of the food and try to distribute it through this public distribution system so that they can contain and manage the prices, rather than tremendous pressure on the demand side with supplies depleted on account of foreign exchange reserves. Why foreign exchange reserves have depleted? It is economically strived. It has no capacity to grow the economy. It is reliant on debt to drive the economy. That is the reason why we are pointing out any instability in that region, especially Sri Lanka, causes immediate tremors because it is sitting right in the, centerpiece of the Indian Ocean.
And we might tell you that Sri Lanka is a nation that relies a lot on its tourist income, and because of pandemic, there's been a significant shortfall. I think that explains one problem, and also there has been a lot of profligate spending on part of Sri Lanka over the last 2 decades. All those loans are coming home to roost, I guess, and now we have this additional challenge that China is building an artificial island facing India just outside Colombo, and we've talked about this. Nobody else talks about some of these danger signals because we think that this is an establishment of an listening post by China to monitor what is happening along the coastal activity of India. You can agree with us, disagree with us, but that's how we see it. Let's move on to United States news. Pentagon acknowledges American stranded in Afghanistan after the pullout. The House Republicans demand a plan to bring home the Americans stranded and left behind. There is a chorus growing from the military to political figures for Austin, Milley, Blinken, Sullivan to resign over this chaotic exit. Whether it happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. Now, there's an interesting perspective that the Biden administration has put out. Before I hand over to Sridharji, I just want to put this thing out there. Biden's administration has said that the remaining 300 odd Americans in Afghanistan are actually dual citizenship holders, and that might not be a problem. Be that as it may, we have to figure out if somebody wants to return, that they be allowed to return. So we have to wait and see how this plays out. Unfortunately, in their infinite wisdom, they have handed over to the Taliban all the people who were helping the Americans, including their citizens. So that is going to have a backlash of some sort. Sridharji, what do you make of all this stuff?
I think what do I make of one great mess that United States is in because of the nobody is denying that you have to withdraw. Nobody is denying that the time spent is over. But the mess, the chaotic mess that the administration has created, and trying to constantly blame Trump administration for this, sounds rather hollow. Which is why there is a chorus growing within United States. 90 retired Army generals have returned to the Biden administration. That you got to go. Defense Secretary has to go, and the Foreign Secretary, State head of the state has the Secretary of the State must go. And also the National Security Advisor has to go. That is Mr. Jack Sullivan has to go. They stopped short of saying Biden must also go. So I think what you're seeing is the spillover. The Democrats attempted to pass in the House a discussion and a resolution around the whole exit and the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Quite effectively, Democrats with a slender majority blocked it because it has significant election consequences, and the poll numbers are not looking good for them for the 2022 House and the Senate elections. So this is the second. The third, which is even more important, is that Mr. Biden has stated that 21st century his priority is around United States and looming threats and China. He doesn't realize that we are 20 years later in the 21st century. Good chunk of 8 years of his early 21st century, he spent sitting in Obama administration, possibly as PGurus cartoon rightly says, sleepy Joe, dreamy Joe. So he's probably still partially asleep, partially dreaming, and waking up. That's the state of affairs as far as this withdrawal and the contest around these different initiatives that are going on.
And some of the Republican states are withholding funds from school districts that don't follow state mandates. 20 states sue Biden. 20 states sue Biden over guidance allowing biological males on girls' sports teams. This is something new. Sridharji, states have to follow what their legislatures decide, isn't it, in terms of even health directives?
Yeah. So just to set the context to all our viewers and followers, we said we use a 10-parameter model to discuss the U.S. policy. So you will see that these 10 parameters or 10 drivers being, as we report news items or as we make comments. So this is one of the transgender is one of the. So there is a big problem. If you recall in Daily Global Insights, we had reported about a contention being made in some of the high courts or district courts. The signs on the outer toilets, which is to men, women, and transgender. So they didn't want that to be identified. Transgender is either a male or a female, or whichever way you want to calculate. So now what's happening is these, particularly the red states, the 20 states here are red states, are saying you can't have this entrusted on us, because some of the schools don't agree these people participating, because there's an element of both religious sentiment as well as people feeling extremely uncomfortable in a sporting field, this specific community being part of it. And so this is why their Biden administration, sorry, the states are suing the Biden administration. You are correct that the law as it relates applies from within a state, relates to the state laws, not the federal laws. But this progressive and Biden administration is inventing this theory: states don't matter, everything will impose from the center. That is what the contest is about. Not only on this, and one more item, which is this abortion issue.
Yes, and small communities face the brunt of IDA damage. More than 1 million still without power, and it is believed that some of the main transmission lines have been cut. So there is a danger that parts of Louisiana could go without power for weeks on end. Sridharji, where does IDA stand now? Has it dissipated, or is it still posing a threat?
No, IDA has dissipated, withdrawn, made its landing, and it's gone away. But it has left a litany of disaster in the state of Louisiana, which is no surprise. Every time there is such an event or a disaster event, you find that the state takes considerable amount of time to recover from this. I think this is where we are. Remember that it is also home to some of the largest refiners. So therefore, it has implications. They slowly should come back to processing the petrol or fuel gas, as it's called here. And but until such time, you will see an uptick in the prices.
And Senator Ted Cruz and Chip Roy blame Biden administration over the man-made border crisis as fentanyl deaths skyrocket. I don't know how much viewers know about this compound called fentanyl. This is another thing that China produces in large numbers, has been a huge reason or cause for concern among the United States politicians, that China is exporting this clandestinely, sometimes, in different ways. Sridharji, maybe we should do a program on this fentanyl, but be that as it may, right now, where things stand, sir?
Well, I think where things stands, these people went around extensively to the states. Both are from Texas, and the observations are that it is creating a problem. This is fentanyl is mixed with this either heroin or opium in the drug. It's just supposed to enhance and create this additional delusional or fantasy in one's minds, and that is resulting. But it is highly potent, and if a wrong mixage can create a deaths. So it is stated, it is alleged that China has been supplying this not only directly illegally into the United States, but also into the drug dens of Mexico, and using that as a conduit for it to come into the United States. And these two people said there are three problems which we all have discussed. First and foremost, remain in Mexico policy people can be validated. That's number one. That's not happening. Number two, that we have removed this granting asylum validation. So anybody who comes in it's left to the discretion of Department of Homeland Security, not even to CBP. And the third, which is even further, that we are allowing everybody to come in without even testing them for COVID or the backgrounds, etc. So they say that these three policies are compounding this fentanyl issue, because one of the biggest problems as to why people stop this is the drug issue and the drug trafficking issue That is the prime reason why that we have a problem in the southern border.
And as active COVID causes cases rise in United States to 5 states, 5 states run out of beds: Florida, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Arkansas, and are left with less than 10% capacity. Remember, all these are close to the border, and these may have been an unintended consequence of letting illegal immigrants through, and then without checking for COVID, and then dispersing them all over the country. And this has to be laid squarely at the doorstep of the Biden administration. For these are all self-inflicted wounds, in my opinion. I'm sure this government and the Democratic Party is going to pay a very heavy price in 2022, because this has directly affected many people's lives and livelihoods. Sridharji, your thoughts?
Well, I think that you have just summarized it very well, sir. So, they say this is Indian playbook. What you're finding is that you find people, you saw cases decrease in India. Then all of a sudden, the the states where you had high propensity of these cases, people moving around, and then it is beginning to spread. In this case of in United States, it is this illegal immigration and infiltration that has occurred, and it has spread. And many of these states do not have the capacity to deal with the peak demand. The other interesting point that Indians are pointing out in the social channels is, hey, you guys critiqued India for oxygen and beds and mismanagement and so on. You are the most advanced economy in the world. You mean to say you can't deal with this crisis situation? Very sad, but that's where we are in. Remember, we again have pointed out this: the federal government does not tell the states or any of the local authorities who they place in their respective states, especially those who are transported from these illegal immigrant centers in the southern borders.
And viewers, this is just breaking news, and we will cover more of this in the days and weeks to come. China claims that they now have a rail connection that takes them all the way to the Bay of Bengal through Myanmar. They claim that they have a rail line connection now that takes them all the way to the Bay of Bengal. And if that were to be true, and if goods start moving that way, then they have effectively found a way around the Malacca Strait squeeze. I don't know what India is doing. We will know more as we start looking at India news now. India crosses 500 million mark in one-dose vaccinations, and in total 654 million doses administered. We have a data chart on our screen now. Sridharji, take it away.
Well, I think that India has made tremendous progress in these vaccination efforts. It has crossed that 500 million mark. I think it's 506 million single dose, and then you have total is 634 million. These numbers are very pivotal. The total eligible universe in India is about 800 or 810 million. At 810 million people, because that is those who are below 18, those who are above 18 years of age. So 70% is the norm, or 70%, 75%, at least one dose vaccine will help it to mitigate, especially the Delta variant. Whenever it raises its head, we already see the early signs of it. So therefore, it's a very important achievement. Even the active cases, India has done well, except for one specific state. By now we had expected India to have crossed or fallen below 300,000, but 4, 5, 6 days of consistent increase of net active cases by 10, 12,000 has taken it to about 370,000 cases. I'm sure that India is carefully watching this, because it's just on the threshold of getting back or reopening the economies in various states.
Kerala is one of those strange states. They claim that they are educated, but they do some of the most illiterate things. Anyway, that's just my observation, and I'm happy to be wrong. India's ambassador to Qatar held a formal meeting with a top Taliban leader on Tuesday, the first formal diplomatic engagement. This is a little bit dicey because, India has not officially recognized the Taliban. How do you say this? Is this like overture? I believe this happened at Taliban's request. What are your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are that India has consistently maintained they must dialogue with all parties. Now, Taliban is a formal government or a formally recognized, say, when I say recognized, Taliban was to be part of the transitional government in the power sharing arrangement, which the various stakeholder countries were working on. If you recall, India participated in these discussions with UK, France, United States, and so on. So they're continuing that. This meeting happened in Qatar. It doesn't mean that India is formally recognized. Remember also another important point. India is the chairperson of United Nations Security Council. And the Security Council passed a resolution on August 31st, which we didn't touch on. But anyway, they passed a resolution which is effectively to say Taliban must comply and allow everybody to leave, and it must also allow not be part of encouraging and coordinate and work with other terrorists. I don't know what the definition of other terrorists mean. And the third is it must follow human rights and international rules. So consistent with that, India is saying, let me talk to them. Taliban has requested, so let me talk to them. Remember, number 3 or number 4 in Taliban is a person who is trained in Indian military academy for over 6-7 years. He still is advocating a partnership with India and asking India to continue some of the developmental projects that they were on, and also trying to say that, imports and exports must continue between India and Afghanistan. But whether the rest of the Taliban leadership accedes to it, we don't know. So, but taking all this into account, I think they are maintaining a dialogue. That just doesn't mean that they have recognized the Taliban.
So we must keep in mind, viewers, that there are at least 6 factions within Taliban. It is claimed that 2 of them are loyal to Pakistan, 1 to China, and the remaining 3 are composition of Pashtuns. And these people are not beholden to any particular country. So it is going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the days and weeks to come. India's economic growth jumped 20.1% in the April to June quarter, coming off a lower base, but it is not the stronger growth that markets expected. India, however, is poised for a stronger growth on stronger structural reforms, government capex push, that is capital expenditure push, says the chief economic advisors. We'll put up the graphic just in 1 second. India's economic growth picking up momentum. Further upside to growth is likely, says Moody's, and as per Nomura, India's business assumption activity has continued to surge above the pre-pandemic levels in the week ending August 29. And here is the chart. Sridharji, take it away.
Right. I think you can see it was corresponding period in the last year. They were about minus 24%, and today in the same quarter 1 year later, it's about 20%. So effectively, it's close to about 44% upswing during the past 1 year, reflecting that India is slowly making its way. The primary criticism of 20.3% is that it's like an asymmetric sectors of economy has grown, exports, some infrastructure, etc. But they would like to really see, especially the services sector, firing, so for it to jumpstart. But still, 20.3 is a great number in terms of gaining the momentum. The the chief economic advisor, and some of the market analysts are continuing to state that the actual acceleration will even be faster as India continues to move forward with various programs. I think most notably these remonetization efforts, as well as the monetization of the assets and the PLI programs, they believe is a good indication that the markets have the ability to further accelerate the growth. And the inflation, according to the economic pundits in India, the inflation is very much contained. Remember that some people will bring up this gas prices or petrol prices and so on. How the inflation is calculated in each of the countries varies from country to country. For example, in United States, food and fuel is not included in the core inflation numbers. So, but they are, because it is subjected to market gyrations. So, similarly, India has its inflation parameters. So, inflation, capital, reforms, three important elements. Of course, non-pandemic scenario are the important elements for the Indian economic development, but seems positive signs.
And now let's take a look at the markets. Consumer confidence falls to a 6-month low on COVID-19 and inflation worries. Markets fell moderately, still finishing a stronger August. We can put up the numbers now. And Sridharji, here are the numbers. Sir, please take it away.
You can see that the Dow fell marginally by about 40 points or 39 points. S&P fell by about 6 points. Nasdaq by about 6 points, but relatively modest and stellar August, 7th month in succession. You have seen the uptick in the markets. Oil, we already covered that there is a rapid growth in prices and momentum. Though they marginally fell, they are back into that 68-72 bracket between crude and Brent. Which again, shows that the economy is coming back into momentum. Okay, as far as the 10-year bonds are concerned, they are now in that 1.25 to 1.3, still relatively very low. The Bund and Japanese, 10-year, remains fairly stable, consistent with US. So there is at least a symmetric linkage between three large economies, which is US, Euro, and Japan, as far as the rates go. The cryptocurrencies, will oscillate one day up, one day down. It's 47,000. Primarily, the volatility is also driven by, or the price movements are driven by people, profit taking and so on. Ethereum was up. I think still there is, with more and more people getting in, I think cryptos will also perform reasonably well as the year closes out.
And that brings us to a close of today's episode of Daily Global Insights. Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so. And you can help viewers by starting to like the program within the first few seconds of it going live. This helps us get to the next orbit in terms of virality among many of the social media platforms. This is nothing new. And if you do that, help us there, that would help this program reach more people. Clearly, as the social media platform put out more messages, more people are going to tune in. It is our goal to continue doing this thing because we feel like we have got that right balance between how long it should be and how much detail we need to provide. And we are always striving to be factual. Sridharji, namaskar, and see you tomorrow.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everybody.